Serious Grower Podcast. I'm Anna. I'm an entomologist. I'm a scientist, and I'm using this podcast to talk to all kinds of growers and eaters who are serious about their farms, their gardens, their local food systems. And I'm asking, how can science help? Today's co-host is Casey. She is an experienced market farmer, having grown in Northern California and now in the Bitterroot Valley out in western Montana. Her husband Jesse are transitioning into non-commercial farming. They are homesteaders now, so you'll be hearing plenty from her because her experience brings so many unique perspectives and because she's my best friend. You up to?
I'm doing good. I'm sore. And I have been for like 2-3 days now. And I'm trying to figure out why. I think it could be, well, a couple of different things, but I was moving this huge piece of black plastic, on top of my oats to terminate my cover crop. So I don't have to flail mow or anything. I was like, I'll just cover it with plastic. Well, like right mid moving this plastic, it started pouring rain. And I was like, oh, this is perfect timing because I didn't really have enough to weigh down the plastic anyway. But like the last half of moving that plastic, it kept getting heavier and heavier. And just like my calves, I was like a sprinter, like off the starting blocks every time I like moved this plastic.
That's something I always really enjoyed about this season is that like the first couple of weeks you like kind of feel like shit and then like all of a sudden you're in fighting shape and you feel really
Yeah, I
good.
know. My calves are going to be in fighting shape. The rest of my body, I'm like, I haven't really been exercising because my calves hurt so much. I'm going to have huge calves. Another thing, today is June 1st, which is the holiday I made up, Birdhouse Day. It's today. Today is Birdhouse Day.
Wait,
Celebrate. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I made up a holiday because every other holiday is made up by someone else. I should make up my own one. The year after we first moved in, which was on June 1st, I happened to make a birdhouse and put it up on June 1st. And I was like, oh, this is 1 year anniversary of, and then so we just did it every year. Birdhouse Day.
Maybe that's why you and I are friends, because I really enjoy celebrating made-up holidays way more than real holidays because like it's not busy. Like, get out and get your hammers ready for Birdhouse Day. Like beat the rush.
Yeah, beat the rush. Yeah, it's been a process, but over the last like 2 weeks, I've been crafting this year's birdhouse. I'll send you a picture later.
Well, you also celebrate Pie Day every year.
I do. Yeah, Pie Day is like, I'm devout. I didn't make up Pie Day though, but I think it's such a sort of silly holiday, really, to celebrate 314.
Is that almost every year that I see you celebrating Pie Day, it reminds me that I miss 311 Day again.
311, what's that?
It's you celebrate the music of 311.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Oh, I should have known. I forgot about 311 Day. I missed 311 Day again. And then Mole Day, like every good scientist.
I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, Mole Day, You know what a mole is, like a MOL.
It's a unit of measurement.
Uh-huh. Let me see if I can do it off the top of my head. A mole.
I've looked it up. I found the wiki.
Okay, what is it? It's something about molecules, because mole.
I mean, you're right on it. You're like almost the Avogadro constant.
The Avogadro's number.
Yeah, it's just 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd, defining the number of particles in 1 mole of substance.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So like if you have a different
number of particles in one
the number
mole.
of particles is the same, but I guess the weight of a mole varies based on the weight of the molecule you're talking about.
Yes, the mass of a mole is changeable, but the number of particles in the mole is constant, according to Avogadro's number.
For those who celebrate.
That's funny. Okay. Yeah, just another made up holiday, but that one was like science-y. Like pie is mathy.
Well, actually, Casey, this does lead into the conversation I wanted to have with you today, because this might be like something you can help me work through. Not emotion. I'm having an emotional day today. I'll tell you about that later. But you know how we were talking about the scientific method and like how people kind of colloquially say, I'm doing an experiment, when they actually mean they're just trying something for the first time.
Right. Well, now it got popular to have like on your t-shirt, I'm doing a science.
Right.
That's what that is.
Right. And I think most people understand that when they say I'm doing an experiment and they're actually just trying something and seeing what happens, they're not actually doing research, right? So like doing research is something really different. But every once in a while, when I'm talking to like the public, I would like a way to say these are two different things without sounding like a no fun Bert about it, if you know what I mean. The scientific method is just something that's so different than any other way that people approach questions. And maybe is it too complicated to say like there's a big difference between like trying something and seeing what happens versus doing an experiment, which is like teasing apart all of the different aspects of what could be going on, inserting all the knowledge from the literature from like hundreds of years ago.
I don't know. I say I'm experimenting all the time when I'm doing things in the garden, but I'm definitely not following any sort of like scientific method process coming up with a hypothesis, or maybe I sort of am. The thing I guess I'm missing is the peer review part. It's just more loosely guided, my experiments in the garden. I just literally what I'm doing is going out and be like, I'm going to see what happens if I do this, and it'll be like a new thing that I haven't tried before.
Well, certainly you're borrowing aspects of the scientific method because like you had a question in mind or you had a hypothesis. You're like, I think this is going to happen and see if that's right.
2 days ago, and now I'm so sore from moving that black plastic, but I wanted to see if I could terminate that oat cover crop with the black plastic in short enough time for me to then replant winter squash. So I've only covered it for 3 days now. I'm hoping to give it like a good week and a half. Here's my sort of hypothesis is that it won't completely terminate the cover crop. And what I'll have to do is pull that plastic back, dig out little holes where I am going to put the winter squash and then put the plastic back on. I think I won't have enough time to terminate the cover crop with the black plastic. But at the same time, I needed to do something because it was starting to develop seed heads. They were very like premature and I didn't want them to seed. And plus there was a little bit of cheat grass coming up in there too that I wanted to just like terminate everything. Multiple factors. And now that plastic is so weighed down, here's another part of the experiment. Will I be able to lift the plastic again when it comes time to see if the cover crop is terminated before I can plant those winter squashes in there? So that's my very brief hypothesis.
I think this is perfect because I also am using occlusion to do something too. And this is a really good demonstration of how you approach a question versus how I approach a question. So your measurement is whether or not you succeed.
Yes. The ultimate goal is to succeed. Doing a science.
It's like you're doing a science, you're measuring whether or not you succeed. And like there's lots of different ways that you could succeed or like there's things that you could learn. So like it's super valuable. And now it makes sense where you're always like, oh, I don't take good enough notes because like maybe in the future you could think back and be like, oh, like this is how long you did it. Maybe if you're successful in the future, you want to recreate it in your own farm with your own system, with your own that piece of plastic that I'm going to go back and do it, right? So like that's very
well. There's
personal.
also just other variables too, because it's just like so cloudy and has been the last couple of days. Like that black plastic needs that sunshine to get the job done. So I think the more sunny days, I would be counting the number of sunny days, not just the number of days.
Right. So here's what I'm doing right now, which is I'm using tarps to do it like a stale seed bed technique, like terminating with tarps. So I have some things that are covered and some that are not covered with these tarps. And I'm actually recording the temperatures underneath the tarps. I have soil moisture. I have soil temperature. I went and talked to a tarping specialist, somebody who's done it. I looked up all the germination temperature requirements for like the most common weed seeds. Like some germinate a little bit earlier, like the brassicas. Some germinate a little bit later after a little bit of heat. So I was like, okay, I've collected on my temperature and like I have my 2 different treatments. And it's replicated, right? So I have multiple different plots. So it's not like, oh, that one was wetter than that one or all these things, but like the amount of legwork that goes into that and like thinking about all the different factors.
Right. I don't necessarily ever replicate these things again. I'm like, I just wonder what would happen. And I don't take notes and I never replicate it.
Or have a control that's going on at the same
That's
time.
part of it too. Yeah. So
Because
I don't at the same time.
That's why
like
would
I've
you?
done things different ways, like in different days, but that's not a control.
Right. So another way to look at your situation would be like different ways to terminate it and then comparing and contrasting how well the plants grow based on nitrogen availability because it's going to tie up nitrogen a little bit. Like it's just going to delay it a little bit as that cover crop goes down. But depending on how you terminate it or how successful you are in terminating it, you're going to have different success in the plant.
Yeah, I hear that. Right now, I only have like so much time before I have to lift that tarp, prepare the holes, whether it's terminated or not, for putting in that winter squash before I go on this trip to Europe on the 12th, which is like 12 days I'm leaving. I don't think I'm going to terminate a cover crop in that amount of time, unless it got really hot and sunny. Maybe. But okay, so here's another part of the experiment, which is only an experiment, not scientific method, is there's like 3 different things going on under that tarp. There's the oats cover crop that I planted, that I wanted to grow. There's also the cheatgrass. I did not want to grow that, just comes up anyway. And then there's thistle, Canada thistle, that loves the runnery sort of rhizominous sort of thistle that, gosh, it just loved me watering that cover crop. It blew up in places where it had never blown up before. So this is like all 3 things.
Okay, I've read up on the research and in mild spring temperatures, something like 60 to 75 degrees with a mix of sun and clouds, 3 weeks should be sufficient to kill an oat cover crop without any significant regrowth. It'll still take some time for the biomass to break down in the soil, but just blocking out light for 3 weeks should do the trick. However, the cheatgrass she mentioned is more likely to require more than just the occlusion, more than just blocking that light. It may require some solarization, some heat. So the sunny days Casey was talking about make sense here because it sounds like best practice for cheatgrass is 4 to 6 weeks of solarization with clear plastic in the heat of the summer. That basically sterilizes that top layer of soil, killing the plants as well as the seeds. I've included a few resources in the show notes, including the University of Maine's Tarping in the Northeast, a guide for small farms that is excellent for those of you who are just getting started with tarping and solarization. And you know, my expertise is in insect pest management, so I don't know a heck of a lot about weed management. It really made me laugh how much work has been devoted to Canada thistle management, and much of it coming from Montana. I read through a 2018 meta-analysis from Stacy Davis and her co-authors, funded partially by the Montana Noxious Weed Trust Fund and the Montana Wheat and Barley Committee for funding. They extracted data from 55 studies conducted in annual cropping systems and 45 studies in perennial systems. So that's a lot of studies to bake into this meta-analysis. Even though herbicide was the most studied technique in both annual and perennial systems, they concluded that integrated multi-tactic techniques with or without herbicide were more effective than sole reliance on herbicide for long-term control in both of these annual and perennial cropping systems. A variety of management techniques were trialed in all of these studies, such as biocontrol, crop diversification, mowing, and soil disturbance, all providing similar control as herbicide, and especially if used in combination. These practices were looking specifically at grain crops over massive acreages. So their goals were not completely aligned with that of a small market farmer, and not to eliminate the weed entirely, but just to evaluate practices compared to each other in short term, less than a year, or in a long term, which was more than a year. And this also sounds like another barrier to studying this weed species is that all of these practices require repeated treatments to be successful. So no matter what you're doing, if you're killing off that top part of the plant with herbicide, repeated mowing, anything you're doing to deplete the stored energy in those rhizomatous roots over time, you got to do it over and over and over again to actually kill the plant. However, our normal timeline for funded research projects is usually 2 to 3 years, and that might not be long enough to tell the full story. That's just how robust these plants are. Noel Orloff and their co-authors make this point in their 2018 meta-analysis focused just on organic practices. They were looking at studies that included biocontrol, mowing, grazing, crop diversification, solarization, shading, flaming, and crop competition. They make this point that more than 53 of the studies they were looking at were conducted over just 2 years, and only 5% of those studies lasted longer than 5 years. So that kind of implies that it might take 5 years to really get rid of a weed like Canada thistle. Nonetheless, all of the papers I read on the topic suggested that tarping was one of the most promising ways to control rhizomatous weeds like this, but they would really need to be left on for several weeks or months during critical points in the season, and then it would take several years of repeating this treatment to kill the plants.
I'm going to just prepare those couple like holes, and it'll probably be maybe like 20 holes or something like that total with some fish emulsion, just like localized application. Then I'll put the plastic right back over it. So it'll be the rest of the whole area will be like covered with plastic for like the whole summer. But just those couple spots where I'm going to like cut the holes to put the winter squash, I'll probably have to like do some hand weeding in those couple holes is what I'm expecting. Yeah. I've had problems with those Canada thistles, those rhizomatous. Is that what I was saying now?
That's what I said.
These row covers previously, those rhizomes were just like took over under there. I had no idea.
So they were still going. They were still
like live and well and not popping up.
Are they getting any light?
I think only just tiny amounts, but it's not like 100% dark. Might be the problem. Under the real thin row covers I was using, but now this is silage tarp that I have on there now. I'll be interested to see, like, after I pull up the plastic, after this growing season for the winter squash, if those rhizomes just spread all over. That's my kind of worry.
Not that I'm a plant person or a weed person, but as soon as I heard you say that, in my mind, I thought, oh, you know what I would do is I would have materials of different light transmission and like put them over each of those plants. Casey, honestly, people who study this kind of stuff purposefully plant these weeds.
Mm-hmm.
And then they will have controlled environments where, like, I have a field of just, I remember this because when I was doing my PhD, there was somebody who was studying quackgrass. I forget. It was like one of these.
Quackgrass
or like
another big
these like
problem here.
Really hard to. He seeded a field with it.
Yeah, did he get his own seeds somehow? Like, that's not something you can find in a store. Quackgrass seeds.
I just think that they got it somewhere and they just chopped up a bunch of pieces of the rhizome and like starfish, right? Spread it through the field. And so he did all these different treatments. And so that way that you have this like standard, like all of the plots that they were treating were the same uniformity, like they had the same soil, they had the same everything, so that when they applied their treatments to try to mitigate it, they could say this could work in almost any situation. But then we had to live with those weeds on the farm. Like, it was a horrible situation. And so, like, that's the kind of thing that happens on research farms all the time.
Yeah, planting thistle. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like, do it on purpose. But then you could go in and say, like, even if you have like 1% light transmission, this stuff is like, good.
I know. I think that's what happened with those thistles. And I really wonder about your peanuts because I've had issues with peanuts. They're pretty hardy and they like the heat. Like you're talking about, it got 120. I bet they're thriving under there and spreading their little runners like as we speak.
So? I don't know. I heard that like during the germination phase, you can cook.
Okay, yeah. If they were established,
so it wasn't the plan.
So they wouldn't be sending runners yet anyway. But
I think you're right.
Yeah, I have had issues with peanuts, like discreetly spreading their runners under sod. I told you about this. Under like mats of sod. And then they would come up in the cracks, like between the sod, like squares, you know?
I'm really laughing at your use of the word discreetly.
Very discreetly spreading, like until it was the whole lady's lawn. It was insane. Yeah. You know what it had started from was bird feeder. It was like squirrels got into these peanuts
because they were feeding,
and the squirrels stashed them away, and then the peanuts started growing.
Okay. back to my conversation with Casey, where I show her a tomato experiment I found on the internet. Well, in the meantime, while I figure out like a cool way to correct people about the scientific method, did want to share something with you. I found this guy. It's an Instagram page. I know you don't really get Instagram. It's called Tomato Nerd Lab. And I want you to know, before I show you this, Casey, I want you to know, I feel very strongly, this man is an artist.
Okay.
This is like an art project.
I love
my view.
Tomato Nerd Lab.
You get the gist.
The
of
Monster
this, yeah?
Energy.
So
Okay.
he set up these Monster Energy drinks. And then he will play Kyle Creed. And Kyle will be like watching cool videos of like rad stuff.
That's the monster one. Okay, Kyle.
That's the monster one. He's listening to Creed. He's watching like dirt bike stuff where Richard is getting boring nutrients and like listening to NPR.
Oh.
What makes me feel nice is that if you read the comments, nobody's taking this seriously.
Yeah, that is nice.
Like, I heard that Kyle only gets to see his kids on the weekend. They're going along with it. But what's really cool about it is that like all of a sudden this guy like got a lot of fame by doing this, and he's helping connect people like tattoo artists.
Oh. He's getting sponsors now about a skateboard company.
So part of me, this is like hashtag science experiments, which makes me go like, that's not an experiment really. But nobody is treating it like it's an experiment. Like everybody knows that this is not research.
Right.
Like it's clearly just a funny art project. Look,
smoking a
is
cigar,
listening to elevator music and like having a cigar.
And now the cigar and the tobacco might actually literally affect this tomato.
Oh, yeah, that's Casey brings up an interesting point here. The tobacco in the cigar could be harboring tobacco mosaic virus, or TMV. So TMV holds massive historical significance in biology as the first virus ever identified. And it is notorious for its extreme durability. We typically think of viruses as only staying viable if they are in a living plant or carried around and transmitted by a living insect. However, TMV does not rely on insects like aphids to spread. It is transmitted mechanically through direct contact, often on contaminated hands, clothing, tools, things like that. So cigarettes and other tobacco products can harbor the virus and transmit it to plants if you handle them after smoking without washing your hands. TMV is less of an issue now because most of our commercial tomato varieties have been bred with some kind of resistance, but you can see this popping up every once in a while, especially in heirloom varieties that don't have resistance to the virus. You know, long story short, don't smoke. But if you do and you grow tomatoes, wash your hands and don't give your plants any cigars. And while I'm busy providing a critique of this hashtag science experiment, let's dive into the nuts and bolts of experimental design. So experimental design is the systematic process of planning and conducting research to test a hypothesis and establish a cause and effect relationship. You know, correlation is not causation. So how do you set up an experiment that proves causation? It involves manipulating an independent variable, measuring a dependent variable, and controlling external factors to ensure that the results are valid, reliable, and unbiased. The peer review process is basically the process by which everybody agrees that the design is good enough given the situation you are studying. And this can vary widely depending on what you are studying. So there are big differences from field to field. There's also big differences on how individuals approach peer reviews. You know, some people tear you apart because that's typically a product of how they were trained. You know, as they say, hurt people hurt people. I come from a background that's always looking for a bright spot. They're always looking about how can I make this shortfall acceptable for publication? What am I looking for? Like, I want that person to succeed every time I'm conducting a peer review. Let's use this horticultural experiment in question to illustrate the scientific method and do a little peer review. So the independent variable is the factor you manipulate or change in order to see its effect. In this case, I am going out on a limb, and Plant Nerd Lab's independent variable is radness. They're interested in the effect of balls out radicalness on tomato growth. Well, you know what? I'm not sure here because This is where things start to fall apart because I think the dependent variable here, the outcome or response that we're measuring to observe the effect of the independent variable, is also radness. So Plant Nerd Lab has manipulated the exposure of Kyle to a rad environment and is documenting how rad that plant gets. This is a qualitative assessment, and I'm okay with that. But I might have measured something else, something quantitative, like plant height, fruit number, or weight, or plant mortality, more likely. Another important element is a control group. This is a baseline group that receives no treatment or a standard treatment used for comparison. And so in this case, that would be Richard, which doesn't make a great control treatment because he's definitely exposed to a different level of radness, but not no radness. I don't know if I would say that he's being exposed to a standard level of radness, or at least not for your average tomato plant. There are a lot of confounding factors. These are outside factors that could influence the dependent variable, the thing you're measuring, which must be controlled or minimized in order to get an honest assessment of the influence of the independent variable on that dependent variable. To confidently determine causality, an experimental design generally requires 4 key elements: manipulation, control, random selection, and random assignments. So manipulation, you're purposely altering the independent variable. Yes, we have done that. We have altered the environment that Richard and Kyle are growing in. The control is keeping all other conditions identical to eliminate confounding variables. Both Kyle and Richard were cuttings taken from the same plant, so we've removed a lot of issues with genetic diversity there. They're both in the same backyard, in the same size container, probably get about the same amount of heat and light. That's all good. I would have liked to see more details about how much Monster Energy drink and how frequently Kyle gets that Monster Energy drink, as well as more details of the boring plant nutrients that Richard gets. But I do trust that those were delivered in a systematic approach. When it comes to random selection and random assignment, it's randomly choosing subjects from a larger population to ensure generalizability, or randomly placing subjects into treatments or control groups to prevent bias. These are important, but given that this experiment is not replicated, there's not multiple versions of Richard's and Kyle's in this backyard, that's another shortfall of this experimental design. And speaking of different types of experimental design, you have your independent measures. So like looking at between subjects. This is different participants are assigned to each condition. So we could break out the different treatments here and have some tomato plants that get the Monster Energy drink. Some get the boring old plant nutrients. Some get the Creed. Some don't. And every combination of these 2 treatments, or what we call a full factorial design. But, how many plants can you fit in a backyard? Then you have your repeated measures experiments or within subject. So the same participants go through all the conditions. And honestly, most horticultural trials must include several factors that cannot be teased apart. So, you can control stuff like light and heat in a growth chamber. But if you want to test real world scenarios of how tomato plants perform in the field over a long period, you gotta lump some stuff together. And all of a sudden, the Kyle and Richard treatments don't sound so crazy. What this really is quasi-experimental design. So it's similar to true experiments, but lacks random assignment. And often we use these when subjects cannot ethically or practically be randomized, such as studying age or gender, or like when you can't randomly give people diseases the way that we can with plants. I'm on board with an experiment that provides a qualitative assessment due to the manipulation of radness in a tomato plant's environment. No one's bummed out about that. I do tend to take it kind of personally when people are practicing actual pseudoscience on the internet, folks who are co-opting the trappings of science to sell stuff to people, stuff that they don't need or stuff that could even make their situation worse. That's a bummer. It might be another conversation for another day, but back to my conversation with Casey.
But it's meant to be funny. It's not meant to solve the problem, is it?
No, and they're not using the trappings of science to make them sound more legitimate, because that's usually the thing that I hate seeing on the internet is where people are saying, "Oh, we're collecting data," and they're just selling you something that's false.
Is this guy a Monster Energy rep? I mean, Richard, the NPR listening, nutrient fed tomato was much taller than the Monster Energy drink skateboard company sponsored Kyle.
Well, did you? I didn't see any difference between the
Just
two
Richard
plants.
was a bit taller, but
how-
straight off the bat, one had been underwatered. That could be an underperformer the whole time. So
Yeah. It's not a good
Yeah, it
experiment.
wasn't.
Well, for a lot of different reasons, because it's not replicated, like there's only one plant versus one plant. And it's also not replicatable because I couldn't go out and give the same Kyle treatment or Richard treatment to my plants because, like, I don't, he hasn't been sharing all the details.
Yeah, like what's the temperature outside? Where are you? What's the ambient like air temperature at night? The humidity. So many factors in doing a science.
But what I want your advice on, and you can think about this and get back to me, is like, how can I start correcting people without being a pill, right? Like, oh yeah, we're having fun. We're experimenting. We're calling a tomato plant Kyle and another tomato plant Richard, right? Like, this is fun. But it's different than what I do, which is valuable and serious and boring. I'm trying to find value in my own place in the world without being unfun.
I hear
I
you.
guess.
I'm reading this book right now. I just started it. I mean, it's actually quite boring, but it's called Leading with Joy. It's about, leadership techniques. I've only 2 chapters in, so I might not have like read the most important stuff yet, but you could compliment the person on things they did good and then cut them down, sort of thing. And then do a good thing again, like sandwich that bad with good bread slices. I'll tell you more when I read the rest of the book.
I guess where I'm struggling, and I've always struggled with this, is that especially when you're talking to really broad communities, I am very apt to want to say, like, yeah, people who don't have traditional scientific training, their observations are really valuable, and like their voices should be as important as mine because, like, they're the ones who are driving the ship, right? Like, they're the ones who are making the original observations. They're the ones who are telling me whether or not the work I'm doing is valuable to them. They're the ones who actually carry it out in the long run. But for whatever reason, like, I feel like every time I do that, like, I'm downplaying the importance of myself in that. And like, how do you do both? Like, how do you bring somebody else up and say, oh, like, let's all listen to them because of all these aspects without downplaying the importance of your role, which is like the rigorousness, like the connection to the scientific literature, like the connection to the expertise that exists outside of our community that we're in now. I think I'm just not very good at selling myself and the value that I bring to the table on that.
Well, it sounds like a networking sort of position role that you're in is like you're bringing them the information. The information is coming from all over. You're like gathering all these bits and pieces from like all sorts of different publications to really customize the approach with this particular person or whoever it may be. Something like this might be beneficial for you. It's like you're a middleman between all these factors.
Here's a question for you. Because, like, you are a farmer, you hang out with farmer communities, you know scientists, like, you know people who work in the research world. And something I'll hear a lot that makes me bristle a little bit is researchers won't tell you.
I like your face you did when you did
Researchers won't tell you this. One of my comedians that I like on the internet, he was basically talking about pseudoscience and like how to identify it. And they're like, if that it starts out with researchers won't tell you, you know it's pseudoscience because researchers are desperate to tell you.
That's what their whole point is.
All they wanna do
Like
is
publish this literature for the masses.
what gives there? Because, like, I wonder if the cultural understanding that researchers are withholding is that, like, we're too cautious about like, about drawing conclusions, or do you think the people who say researchers won't tell you are just using that to, like, sell
I don't
their
know. I think
tinctures or
researchers
whatever?
won't tell you the mentality. Probably these people don't know any researchers. That's why they haven't talked to these researchers. And these researchers haven't told them anything because they've never met a researcher. The researcher is away in their laboratory, like secluded themselves from humanity while they're doing this research. Of course, they're not talking to you. Once they're done with their
Right.
experimentation or their research, then they'll publish it. And it's up to you then to find the research. It's not like they're broadcasting over a PA on the town square.
Or in that sentiment, like what you're talking about, I think the kind of person who would use the phrase researchers won't tell you, in their mind, a researcher is like a tweedy, pipe smoking man. And if they have somebody right in front of them, like they don't connect that. Because I remember one time I went and did a site visit, and it was a new vineyard guy. Like he was having a problem with something. And I went and talked to him, and we were talking about different things. And like I had just started somewhere, and I was like talking about the research I was going to do. I was like, oh, I'd love your input. Like maybe I think I'm always trying to recruit growers to like do letters or be on advisory, like stuff like that. And like I later saw him promoting a talk he was giving, and he said, researchers won't tell you. And I could not believe it. And in hindsight, maybe he just didn't think of me as a researcher.
Researchers won't
Because like
tell
I was a
you.
real person who was like out in the field with him, and researchers don't do that. Do you know what I mean? Because at the time it hurt.
Yeah, did you tell him?
I didn't. I never
Oh,
talked to
okay.
him
Well,
about
there
it.
you go. No, researchers aren't talking to you. Researchers never going to talk to you again. I think a lot of that is like people are imagining Anthony Fauci, who is so misunderstood by like the masses. And polarizing. And people have this opinion of him and have no idea what he actually has done. That's the same sentiment as researchers won't tell you. It's like, I've made up my mind. Researchers won't tell you. That's my mind.
Somebody's gatekeeping somewhere.
Who's the gatekeeper of all this research?
I think what you're saying is right. Like there's like they're away, not literally like in a lab, but like we just don't talk the same language.
Will people just come to these conclusions and be like, this is what we should do now? This is what we should do now. And all of a sudden we're feeding plants Brawndo.
Well, that's why I want to make it clear. Like, I think this man is very creative. He's an artist in the sense that, like, he's plugged into a very specific cultural phenomena. And you see what he's doing is like he's promoting other people's artistic endeavors. Like, he's promoting tattoo artists. Whereas, like, I just don't think, or I haven't seen real scientific vigor be promoted through fun stuff.
Do you know who my kid loves? Mark Rober. Do you know who this guy is? Okay, see, check out Mark Rober. He was like a former, I believe, NASA scientist. He's no longer working for NASA, and he just does videos for kids and shows kids how to do like different experiments. It's really pretty awesome, I think. And he does have, I feel like, a lot of both worlds going on. Like he does have this scientific sort of method, but also that like he'll totally like cross promotion, like have this other guy from YouTube come on. He's like the battery exploder guy. It's like all these flashbang like tactics of like, yes, everybody is gonna want to see this and doesn't want to turn away. It's like a guy he has on his show a lot is Mr. Beast. Have you heard of Mr. Beast?
Yes. I think I know what that is. But he's the one who like gives people money for
There's that part of it too. He does all sorts of just like, I mean, he got to start just on YouTube, but before he even started, he did all this research. It was like, what makes a viral YouTube video? And kind of made it into a science, if we want to say a science of like making a viral social media just like skate for himself to then just like build upon this empire based off of YouTube and like viral videos and things like that. But Mark Rober, he's like on a somewhat different trajectory because, well, now he's definitely making a bunch of money from these shows and kits that he sells, like these, like you subscribe and you'll get sent to your house once a month, like a build box or hack pack is one of these things that kids love.
It seems like he has a real purpose, right? So like doing like these flashy things to get attention, that has a purpose. At the end of the day, he's trying to get kids to be excited and like have their minds open a little bit. I haven't found my purpose yet. So like all of these kind of like sucky internet-y things that people are like, I'm getting really good advice from people and I really appreciate. I don't want to say that I don't appreciate this, but people would be like, oh, you should try this, you should try this, you should try this. And I'm like, I want to do all these like internet-y things, but I don't know why. Right. I don't know like what it would be one thing if it was like embarrassing yourself or like doing something that's kind of soul sucky and then like you get attention and then you divert it to something not good or bad, but like the reason you did it, which is like promoting a business or like drawing more eyes to something that you think is really valuable. I just haven't found that yet. So like I'm directionless. I'm awash. And like I don't have this like, oh, like just come and see what I'm doing because like what I'm doing is so good and interesting and like the world would be better if they knew who I was and what I was up to. Is that my modus
I don't
operandi?
know. That's a hard question. I feel like part of the beauty of what you do is make dull sort of like subject matter fun and exciting and funny.
I I guess so.
For me, though, and everybody's different. If I need a change of circumstance and I'm like, I'm in a rut or whatever, just simply going out into the woods for me. It's not the same for you. Camping. No.
You know how I feel like
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
paying.
Whatever it is for you, like just do that for 2 weeks. And then get it just like a new perspective.
That's so pertinent though, Casey, because I went to the tarot card reader this weekend with my sister. Because you know how I like to have the opinion of a stranger when I'm having a hard time making a decision? I didn't care for her. She had a very off putting personality, which made me think, how is she making it as a tarot card reader if she's like this? But that she had the same advice for me. She's like, you need to meditate. And I was like, really? I need to meditate. But like what you said is what she meant, which is like you
Strip yourself away from your daily life and to plop yourself into a whole new situation. Really, what that comes down to, and I don't want to be like too meta philosophical, but the shedding of the ego is what it comes down to. When you're out in the woods, and you don't necessarily have to be by yourself. You could be with other people, but it forces you like into the moment, which is supposedly one of the keys or whatever for happiness is just like savoring each individual moment. Also, bird songs. It's like, oh, I can hear the birds eating nuts and berries and stuff like that out in the woods. I think it's just like, for me, the forest, the woods, it's just like a jump start of like shedding your ego, being in the moment sort of thing.
But your point is such a good one, and to recognize that you and I have a real country mouse, city mouse thing, because my version of that, my version of feeling more connected is conversations like this. I feel more connected every time I talk to anybody about the project, and I always walk away going, oh, it was better. And I think that's like your connection to the earth and isolating yourself makes you feel more connected to the universe. Well, I am sorry that got so touchy-feely, but I was feeling very bad. And this talk with my friend, who knows me so well, it was a real shot in the arm. You know, it's a cliche, but every time you're stuck, you just need to ask for help, and this should be there somewhere. So I'll leave it there for now. Thanks so much for listening. Serious Grower Podcast is a production of New Hampshire Community Supported Research. If you are interested in becoming a co-host or would like to learn more about our mission to democratize agricultural research, visit our website at nhcsr.org. If you want to learn more about anything we're talking about, make sure to check out our YouTube channel at NHCSR, where we're sharing insights from the agricultural research community and blogging about our research efforts on the farm. You can support this work by liking and subscribing, and even better, consider joining our Patreon community.